Okay, well, your best shots here in 2 minutes. To my 10 on the shots here. I think so. We have about 8 people. So by 10 you know, yeah, sure. You mean that say? About your Mr. Mo, wow, about to be a Fakonya is um, na share link, Zoom link, or phone now, almost something be. Okay. Abusuafo yɛ mo nyinaa akɔ aba kɛseɛ ɛba ɛnna nnwuma dwumadie so for HRFPK anaasɛ His Royal Freshness PK ɛnna me ne mo na ɛba bɛdi dwumadie yi na biribia ayɛ kamakama. Mesrɛ mo sɛ mohu me screen no anaasɛ bia you guys see sɛ Uncle Jimmy na da so still. Obi ɔmute no ankasa ma mente wapatwɔ.
On Zoom and as a YouTube.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure say
You're not sharing the screen by you who? Obi also be.
okay. All right. Okay. Into the Zoom the other is basically okay, it shows basically what I was asking into my hope is when Zoom the. So and then you may topic today about discussing a very, very simple yet very delicate and also sensitive. Um, the causes and impact of PTSD. First of all, you mentioned said they can't put any PTSD. And also no you the definition of PTSD we are now I feel you say I want to say then any PTSD ba and you the PTSD by we are na feel ya share so so enya ewe ya brabo mu. So basically, no, what is PTSD, the causes of PTSD, and also the impact in our lives. And sometimes people feel that the impact in your life, for instance, stops just at your life, but then the influence of it can also impact other people's lives. Into the need to understand it and find a better way to treat it. And I said, yeah, manage, is very, very important. Now, nipa yɛn ne nipa bi di dwumadie ɛyɛ mental health expert anaasɛ practitioner a ɔne yɛn ɛbɛ doso mu yɛ na afei deɛ yɛapɛ akwan pa na yɛhu ha yɛbɛte dɛm asiɛ ase ɛfrɛ no Dr. Philip Oforio to me yɛne no di dwumadie bebree ɛwɔ dwumadie yi so ama yɛhu how a nneɛma si teɛ nti wei no is just another opportunity for us to learn more from him today. Now, I say the because me fa kwenye so na ma da abo for so yesterday. I say, I think the last 2 weeks we couldn't have the show due to one or two technical issues beyond our control. And last week the director was like a holiday, into yeah, ndi a home kakra na mo enjoy a holiday no. Veterans Day, Memorial Day, but in there, yeah, the Abramo, kama. Inti, you may hand you over. About first year said you were able to through a feel good services or non our into and more when it comes to mental health, education, and all the good things that you can find out. And if you also feel good homes, baby, I'm telling you, feel good homes. Currently, more Ghana, I hope the network will be sustainable enough for all of us to enjoy. You can come here and also enjoy your short stay with a 2-bedroom apartment, 1 bedroom, and also a studio, very affordable at East Legon Hills. No, no, no. Ebi about for bills as well as the enya by Millicent Mensa says open any financial breakthrough and I say be best way to get some life insurances for your family and college education fund enya by Millicent Mensa. I say the chair na afide bibia ebeko so come on. So also na miss also air camo say um Ghana Music Awards USA is coming off on August 17th. Tickets near out. So if you don't have your tickets, please go get your tickets and make sure so you do the needful. Ebiom. Ambuza Experience, August 3rd is happening. Ambuza Experience, August 3rd into the Bishramo. More money ready, no. Money ready, now I'm going to ticket. The ticket is almost sold out. Into no, but Modia, the pay will ticket, acquired. All right. TapTap Send, TapTap Send, acquire befa so send sika Abraham Wagana, said me Wagana in Abia for the say Teresa Jemia Ebuefu or CPK me shower being here be £100 na odi assorted home and no tata send and as a corner phone so or download the app no now or the promo code PKP hyphen KAY Eshin. That's what's £100 now. Obo won't say you did £10 aka home. Say be a Teresa sending $100 won't say you did $15 aka home. Now I feel there ababeto my account nti na tse me $115 but no ya $100. Teresa made us say you do an example na e bia befa akwanya so na wase ne sika na ba eba so e budget ne ya da wase e bia mi so e ka say very safe, very affordable and also no secured. Secured. And please use it. Maybe Ghana say kutoka both say sign up for kama udru carousel honum na baggage claim. My name is feel good by uhui. Say na TapTap Send sign no ebo wo honum na our baggage claim. So uhui dia.
I may have missed it.
Oh, sir, and then about make a video cry. I don't see anything you could so close here until the future videos cry come. But yes, there was screens there running there on the back of that ball one which I don't know one share be but yes, TapTap Send is doing well and also reaching out to the community in terms of corporate social responsibility. With that being said, I'm going to hand over to Feel Good now for the or my at PTSD and then so as a nene cover by now. Feel I'm about Jumedi so.
Yeah, and yeah.
I want for me dear.
Oh, Yamiado. I want to
The
physical strength or mentally stable.
financially
Stable,
so.
okay.
Financially stable so. All right. And then the PTSD.
Okay. Adolfo ne ahwefo ne tiefo amwo bia ahodo nyina yamamakwa aba. Said the pika aka na ka PTSD ho asem. And of course, I'm no stranger to this platform. You hear any extensive introduction bia. Na yeka PTSD I'm say adwenche bebre ewo ho and then no yebe yi sa adwenche aye kakra ewo ho no afi ho no na ya me hu buta anaso say ade crop ya eye ensusu so a ede eba ene symptoms enoma bi won ma wo da na di say ebia owa enti no
feel the Mr. Fache me pacho me jump a guy no. Uncle Jimmy, Mr. Before first but my talker, no.
Yeah.
Mr. Bet me my update from TapTap Send me pacho.
Okay. Abusua my nyina ho akwa about this program. I'm say like PK said, we apologize for the past 2 weeks. Me I'm online. Still, TapTap is doing good. We have a better rate now, and send the BS you can ever secured. To some say this time will be and try say obe patronize with TapTap as a family. Still now we are waiting for a wallet program no US and Canada. We are starting with UK. Almost started is performing great. Europe almost started. We are just hoping say very soon a bit land and so inside Canada. Later, Yadamasi, Dr. Fall, Yadasi Baby, say the beyond agents I was wanting the mom, that's baby.
Okay, you know, Miss Medase. Okay, so say you can say PTSD was a letter say Gina Homer BB into you breaking it down. Now after the FFU on into your car a patch post traumatic stress disorder. So there's trauma which cause some stress to the body, right? And because of its consequences in your body, it becomes a disorder, a behavior. So which means that answer you bet say, oh, PTSD, no, the trauma must have been present. But then it happened in the past, and that is why it is post the trauma, after the trauma. And you can't PTSD, basically, that is what it is. Some of the perceptions that when they say, oh, moko akono, ana enya sa yare no, and as they say, enya that disorder. But what it is that PTSD is not limited to war zone, and as I say, it's not limited to moko akon. Partly why it's linked to soldier for and they said this thing happened where a soldier for they realized, they said there was a lot of differences in the way they were integrating back into the system. And then there may be no modernity. Into the more high some psychologists to look into what happened to them after they come home. And that is when they realized, they said, due to the trauma that they've been exposed to, after the maybe and access maybe on more modernity. And that is why traditionally, it's been linked to a soldier for. But as I said, it is not exclusively associated with a soldier for. So now, say you can say trauma no so and say what it is, they say what may be traumatic for one may not be traumatic for the other, right? And two people may be exposed to the same environment. One may have a traumatic event from it, the other person will be perfectly fine. Hence, one may ask, why? So, why? For various reasons. Memory resistance level is different from Uncle Jimmy resistance level. And me patron say, about to say me pedin the example, I just go on the screen, the be poppy up be and me bonti me show me bo dia. It is nothing personal. It's just for explanation purposes. Memory resistance level is different from Uncle Jimmy there because of my upbringing, what I've been exposed to, what I've trained my mind to deal with, right? And I've trained my mind to deal with circumstances related to violence. Therefore, if I'm exposed to anything violent, it doesn't affect or impact me like that. Maybe Uncle Jimmy so training the mind to deal with something more with emotional abuse. And if Uncle Jimmy is to be exposed to emotional trauma, he will handle it better than me. My training me there to deal with physical trauma, right? And whatever we build resistance to or towards, when it comes that we're exposed to it now, our how it impacts us, becomes different. Now, the other thing also is that okay, the also issue with TapTap Send, and I think that there'll come a time for the Q&A with TapTap Send, we'll address that one. But since we're talking about a specific topic, right, which is PTSD. Then we can address all specific TapTap related issues. Mr. Stay on to the end of the program, and then we'll have that one addressed for you. That's it. So now back to trauma. No, what it is that you may have an exposure, right? But it may not bother you as much. But interestingly, no, obi ojinan channel may be affected by that more than one kasa too. And also say it will affect both the person present and then the person affected. So when we talk about trauma now, it is not limited to the tone, but then the exposure also be and also say we are preview to it. Okay, so that is how trauma itself happens. It's, you know, what if someone may ask, you say, then what is traumatic? And when I may explain earlier, I said, what is traumatic to me may be different from what is traumatic to Rodi, and I said Joanne, and I said Uncle Jimmy. It's, you know, beyond the level of resistance. And part of why our resistance level may be different is because of our previous exposures, our background, and how we train ourselves. The other thing also say when it comes to PTSD, it manifests itself differently. So now we already mentioned said the trauma must have been present, exceeded that. You've had the exposure. Now we've got it to the point where you are not able to manage it well, right? And you know, also at that point, you know, it's exposed like a done way differently. Typical symptoms are nightmares where you have flashbacks. Until you find an example, say, obia now or physically abused so much, right? Sustained physical trauma. After the then you hear the voice of the person that was abusing you. And as I said, the act that the person did, you know, saw the husband not about right? And you know, at that point, we say you're having the flashbacks, and I say you're having the nightmares where it wakes you up. Now airport now so typically and you can see say they're having a serious argument with someone, and it may be from their flashback. And with that, no sorry. And sometimes you realize that at that point, because they've been engaged in a serious activity and they are having a panic attack from it. Well, it was an end who not nakuma ebo peri. It's sign the reliving of the situation that they just went through. Okay, so that is the classic symptoms of PTSD. But it is not always when you have to go to sleep and then you have that reaction. It go on even while they are awake. So let me give an example. So only about Frauofie, what I ebona. Ubos of mouse asuna no not were reacting, right? At that point, they are reacting to the perceived trauma na urban. To most of mouse also are not reacting. It so happens to say after the obekwa bonte, where somebody may raise their hand for a certain reason or the other, who said they'll have the same reaction. Okay, so these are kind of some of the symptoms that we see. And in the younger ones, and also no, you realize say, okay, but then due to the PTSD symptoms, you know, CC and already living, you know, they have this retrogression into both a bedwetting, no, was starting air for nimpa and ajo or koda. These are also some of the symptoms. The other thing which also makes it very difficult is that symptoms, you know, emba immediately after the exposure. Into enya bra asemnesi no emuhwa ana ubehuna symptoms no daddy. Ebi on my check, ebi on my fear bebrechi. And you know, you may go through certain reactions, you may have certain symptoms, and then you may have certain difficulties so many years after the exposure, Nankasa. And you know, at times it becomes difficult linking your current situation to what is really causing it. And that is why you always need a professional. in navigating through this. Say enye sana one kasano ebade ye de ma hu say ebia divorce bia me go through. Ebia me ba eyi bia esiye. Ebia asem bia to me bra na bisha. Ana masisi ano me go through no. Oh, into the term biano, it is very important that you seek a therapist. If you wonder, say, oh, the therapist, what would they do? There are different forms of therapy. So there is the talk therapy where we do typically talk to you, do assessment, get to know what is going on, get to know your background and all of that, right? And sometimes we dig very deep into your background. So at times it becomes uncomfortable reliving the past. But if you don't also get it out and then talk about it candidly, then we will not be able to also fully assess and know what is going on with you, and therefore be able to give you the right form of treatment. And I recommend the right form of treatment, which includes the talk therapy, right? So most of the time, we hold back, especially in the African community.
Phil, who don't we have your questions now?
Yeah, I thought she was referring to me, but I realized it was in regards to the previous question. Okay. So I was making a point to say the talk therapy in the African community, we restrain ourselves from talking about certain things. You know, maybe one man say one year ferry who say whatever the reason is, time pay but then let's also realize that these therapists are people who have sworn the oath of secrecy. And so do I say or more, and also do I say more. I'm not promising 100% say what's a mumpieda because say be a nipa so the but then they are held in high esteem. Should it happen, there are redress that you can seek. And because of that, it's a protected environment. So you should feel safe to go out there and have your necessary conversations with a therapist. When that happens now, a couple of things happens, right? I have this model where I call the 3 T's. So first of all, you have to talk about it, and then you have to teach it, and then we have to treat it. So if you have anything at all going on at any point in time, and you refuse to talk about it, and then the focus say, so auto yaria and onya right? Basically, that is what it is. And as you talk to the therapist about it, then the therapist will be able to help you navigate through the challenges that you have. So that is the thought therapy. There are also different forms of therapy. You bet to me, I recommend it amount. For the purposes of education, we will not get through all of that. But then the other thing also is that there are forms of medications, which also helps with you treating your PTSD symptoms. And if you go through the talk therapy and then the other forms of therapy and the medication now, clearly, there is help, so you don't have to suffer. Some also say, oh, macro therapy, yes, you may be right. There are different conditions that combination of treatment modalities a single form. So what I mean is that say ebia we call for just the talk therapy now in combination with medication may be better, right? Because PTSD, the level of damage that is done to the brain, talk therapy alone may not be able to reverse it or take care of it. And you need that chemical formation and as a chemical medication to also help with the balance. Okay, and most part of the symptoms has anxiety components to it. Therefore, as part of what we treat is treating of the anxiety. Once again, talk therapy helps with anxiety treatment, but the medications also helps very well. And that is why the combination of it coming together receive better treatment in general when it comes to PTSD. Right. So now I've mentioned what the definition is, generally how it happens, It is not limited to servicemen and women. It stems from an exposure or an experience with a traumatic event, being single or sustained. Maybe AC once a pet, and also say AC to so. So being single or sustained, a bit me affected. And also, no, when they affect you, some of the symptoms, I just gave the very highlight symptoms, and as I say, high level symptoms of how it can present. And also, no, the forms of treatment, right? So I want it to be interactive as much as possible so that we can get to the other session. Hence, I will pause right here. You may have heard something about it in the past. You may have come with some questions. I don't want you to just be but maybe I'm not plagiarism. But I want you to be a citizen. So if your person boost questions and answer particular patch, quite a hard bit me.
All right, so what question do you know if you do emoji so with the hand now? I'll quickly or gladly call you, then you talk. But if you can't locate to emoji that person kasa, go ahead and mute yourself. Those of you who don't want to talk or cannot talk because of current location and want to test, just do that as well too, and I'll go ahead and call you.
Okay. So while we wait for that, and yes, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity. So please, at this point, you can interrupt at any time. But while we wait for that, right? Now, when we're talking about PTSD also, let me give another example. I gave the example of childhood trauma and as I said, somebody being abused. And then we've also talked about military for, right? And other people that go to war. So now let's give the example of still on the childhood, but then in relation to Obia or the Omejano, and as people that you expose your kids to, right? Now, we are say Bonya dosu we are say. Therefore, you cannot really guarantee what some people would do if you are not fully familiar with these individuals and know them very well. So there are cases where I don't know if any of you have ever heard about the ACE study, right? Adverse childhood events.
The ACE
study. What's it?
You see the 4 ACEs.
Right. So now with the ACE, it happened that people, their childhood events, like things that happened to them as kids, they were followed for years. And it was realized that most of the things that they were going through in adulthood stemmed from a normal esi. So the various forms of trauma that they were exposed to, when they got older, they had both physical symptoms, medical conditions, and mental health issues affecting them, right? So I'm saying this to say that we should be very mindful where we leave our kids, the kind of things that we expose our kids to, because with time, it will affect them. So example would be, say, I think we've seen videos online where kids in daycare or maybe they were supposed to go get like cared for. They were being abused, right? Especially physically. So with years, you realize that it follows them. And as I was making the point about they do so because they're emotional. And we know that with time, like if you continue to have panic with time now, then you start developing some cardiac issues, including hypertension, right? Because anytime your body sends itself into that hypervigilance, and then you go into the flight mode or the freeze mode, right? And that sympathetic nervous system reactions, any the parasympathetic nervous system reactions it has effect on the body. Into the time, you realize you said now for the when you're hypertension and that's when you're kumayari, and then it leads on to too many other complications, which includes kidney. And let's be very mindful about some of the things that happens to our kids. And also as adults, as we start to also generate some of these complications, please, let's dig deep and then see what might have happened to us as case of which at that point we probably did not pay much attention to. And I also said we did not have the opportunity to seek treatment. Then we work on that. Now, I had mentioned earlier, but let me reiterate. What may term as an abuse to one may not be an abuse to other. And as I said, traumatic to one may not be traumatic to the other. So you may have 3 siblings in the same household. Their parents went through a nasty divorce. 2 of them is highly affected. The other one is unbothered, right? The same exposure to the same event, but then 2 of them are highly affected. The other one unbothered. Nothing happened to him or her. Okay, so it is important that we do not the same way. Next only only na de nyina ifi krobu na de ti na wo de tebia na de we wo kan sa de eto kwaku no ene de eto kobra no, because they are 2 different people. The way they will process it, receive it, and they react to it is very different, right? Now, in terms of the nightmares and also, it comes in different forms. So there are times where it makes you so scared that you cannot fall asleep, and then you start having these flashbacks. So somebody that was raped, and it happened in a certain environment, right? I don't want to be specific and describe too much details of the environment. So you just use your own imagination and follow me with it. So it happened in a certain environment. Anytime they are in such environment, they have that flashback. So it could be in the car, in a room somewhere, in a dark place, at the bus stop, train station, wherever. So anytime they happen to be in such places, then they have the flashbacks, they start to have panic attacks, and then it becomes very difficult for them to breathe, stay in that location, or do anything. All right. So let us be mindful of some of these things. When we say they act, I won't say weird, but they act differently under certain circumstances. So only people are fire, we patrol interrogating more. There might be more going on. And the reason why I say that is the more you know, the better you are to help someone. If it's a friend that you spend so much time with, you realize that their attitude may be affecting your relationship or the things that you can and cannot do, right? So you want to engage them in that conversation and get to know. Also talking about relationship. Sometimes we carry our past into our current relationship or future relationships, and they're all from the trauma. So either my previous relationship, I was emotionally abused where I was talked down all the time. I was physically abused where Chebiano abada meso and I said yatre belt or meso. I was sexually abused because I was used as a sex object, right? Now I have to move on into a new relationship. It will initially make it even difficult for you to get into one because you always feel that this person coming on may treat me the same way. You've successfully gone past that stage. Now you have some relationship going on. But then at any point in time, this individual tries to explain something to you, and then you feel that you are being emotionally abused because I don't use a minimum answer and they can maintain saying what you want to say. Okay, it's because it's coming from that past, and that could be some of the trauma that you've had, and then now you are reacting to it. Okay, so it comes in different shapes and forms. Acquire who do be brave so and a PTSD FABA. And if you have any specific questions, I don't mean get into your life details or the details of somebody's life, but if you have any questions in relation to this topic now,
There is a question from Joanna. Say, host, being a retired serviceman yourself, what is the percentage of servicemen coming out of service with PTSD? So just to add on to what Nafio Ekano, the aces no are very very important. Like I was talking about the four aces no when he mentioned of the aces no. We have the one that emphasizes on the culture, right? And one that talks about your friend is climate. So even in climate change alone, no crack can also be some adverse childhood. And as adverse climate change, a bit me cause a big problem. Then the atrocious, beliefs and as a religious background. So your culture, your religious belief, and the climate and the childhood experience itself alone can be an impact. Now, just like he said about maybe nipa mmienu in the same family have the same impact, have the same causes, but the impact is different on both of them. It's the same thing with the military, right? There are some people that would join the military, see the same action, and never come out with any PTSD. But on a larger scale, a lot of people a lot of people who comes out of the military with PTSD, with PTSD, um, are those that were exposed to deployment and as an action, mostly. But with that withstanding, I don't just say, Omo man deploy, we don't have PTSD. Some do have PTSD, very, very, very bad, even probably like worse than Omo deploy. So just that maybe those that deployed, had years because the deployed environment, had a lot of hostility, and ma or more, triggers, sorry, more as to um, those who didn't. I'll share a quick experience, right? I remember back in March 11th, 2013. The date is back between anywhere from March 11th to 14th. And if you Google it, you will see it. There was a Boeing aircraft 747 that took off and 7 passengers died at Bagram Airfield. These were crew members. I had just had a conversation with them. They just were about to take off and leave. As soon as I'm gonna take you off now, something behind me didn't end 200 feet and a plane on and just went in flames. Okay. And standing there talking to these people, watching them get on the plane, board and just take off, and right in front of you, the whole flat line is in flames, and this 70 people are coming down in flames, will be something that will stick with you the rest of your life. And sometimes when I'm in a dark place with no lights now, I can see that smoke, come through, and like all 7 of them standing in front of you and walking away, headed towards to go, board the plane. So that can be a severe PTSD. When you sleep, sometimes you can have that. Maybe before you can be having nightmares, but maybe I know nightmares in your body. Says lights ni it comes, but so light will also there. You don't feel anything. You can sleep with the light on, and everything goes. Obviously, because to sleep with the light on, not because get it. So when to be doing light, I want to be in that, then that is a bigger issue. The parties can't or they can. So PTSD to me is real. I believe sir, it's real, and the best thing is to seek help and find the best way. Wow. Than say you turn the light off. Say I would say light no so wait me that go by it. That is after we seek help. Make us and to seek help. But then so when we say we do light, that's a bit more problems. So why turn the light off?
Okay. Maybe that's PK. So, Joanne, I think your question is mostly answered, but in terms of specific percentage, it's also dependent. Like with the data out there, it ranges around 60 to 70%, but it also depends on which tour they did. So those that did the Gulf, those that did the Vietnam, those that almost will be out there very severe. And when you look at the older generation now, or more DNA, much more. I had one patient to be, man, that guy, he scared me as a provider. But yeah, more DNA severe. More DNA severe. I don't want to talk about some of the details of what they went through. But, then some of the presentation also is that Obu onuma owura baby a ontimi entna with their back facing people, right? Because of certain exposures they've had. It doesn't have to be from war. Obu onuma wa baby a fight be a CP. And for that reason, they always have to be in the known of what is going on. I worked on site unit for. Was it?
You may never know.
Yeah, and, they always have to be aware of what is going on. I was making the point that I worked on site unit for so many years now, to the extent that like I don't feel comfortable somebody working behind me without me knowing what I say, because we be a bit messy. And to date, I go places and I always prefer say maybe I'm who baby. Oh, it's from Eduma Maya, and then I'm again PTSD. It comes in so many forms, so many forms. You just have to know what is causing it and then be able to manage it well, just like any other condition. So when you saw DSC baby with diabetes, a then you know how to regulate it, right? And you just have to know where it's coming from, and then you know how to manage it.
Yeah, Doc, I have a question, Kakrebi. Answer back home. Well, the early 80s in college or high school, no. Not to say, especially a my side, no. After, especially dinner. But I know Mukikem. Makubona Bas high fever type will be. What the Bako hospital it follows. A bet my be nipa be 6 or 10 at a time. And how do you place this?
What was their reason?
And one is over one says, yeah, said, Janny knows.
Especially reason is that Taman and Mo school, so no be by an air friend, Madam High Hill. So, Bidim said, movie Kaisa ina. Right? So, I didn't have a busa because there was some story about it. If that, then of course, it will make them yell and all that. And sometimes, my partner say,
I mean, Kasai.
oh, okay. And sometimes it may be something that is happening out there. And I would say if you be so spirituality is a different issue. And we don't want to mix it with this one. I don't want to mix it with this one until the idea. But then there could be some causative factors leading to that. Without any specifics, it's very difficult for me to conclude there was any trauma happening. Major one is that, oh, if the doctor himself has, and like almost everybody has some level. If you work in a certain environment for so long, it will have some level of effect on you. I don't know, like, I don't want to make it about me, but definitely there are certain things that I become more hyper vigilant on. Not necessarily because I have I won't be diagnosed with PTSD assistance, but then I'm more aware, like, on the normal, no, find the normal, maybe I may find the normal. What am I saying? Like, I enter a place and quickly I have to scan and see what is going on before I move or before I set or before I do anything. I have to. Because on the psych unit, you can't just walk and then go sit somewhere without being aware of what is going on. It's that kind of training and then working in that environment now, it's made me more aware of certain things. I enter a place quickly, I'm assessing for suicide risk. What do I say? But around my I feel. But then maybe I said no, I didn't know height, I will be about it. Oh, and and I can't say affect what you, but I'm all more hypervigilant. Okay. So, and also on that point, it goes to tell you, say we're all at risk, right? We all at risk. So there is no one immune to anything at all. In this day and age, or be at risk of one thing or the other. All right. Any other questions, comments? And then there's a group ID, which means say that's a match as a partner, as a confusing.
Comment maybe or YouTube anywhere.
Okay.
YouTube.
Okay, so whilst PK checks on that, then let me talk about some of the what to do if you are with someone with PTSD. First of all, do you know what triggers them? Because the nimness or their reaction may be very severe. As I mentioned, the patient that I had, there was one, then the wife here night, and he had told the wife, he says, "Oh, Befi, be a friend. Let's stay on the phone until you open the door and enter." He always carried a gun, always. Now, maybe to our assessment, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. So I told him if he doesn't mind putting away, catch him said no. One was say he's put the two tables. Always. So with that, there was one night where the wife came home, forgot to call, and what happened to the wife? Now she's an ex-wife. So, like, when it comes now, it can be very impulsive and it can be very bad. So please know what triggers them and stay away from it. And yes, me the diagro. But if it is a trigger for someone with PTSD, and diagro, because it's an impulsive reaction. In a split second, I have to decide on something. So let me say it this way. Let's say I've been in an environment where I had to act quick because I feared my life was in danger. Anytime I have that trigger, it's the same reaction that I will have. What am I saying? So if I have to, as somebody put it, if I have to clear everything, after which I have to decide if there was somebody in there, that is what I'll do. One more, because when my life is at risk, I have to make sure I'm safe. So if it includes hurting somebody else, moving something, running, whatever I have to do, I'll have to do it. And that is the kind of reaction it comes with. So please, all jokes aside, so only one per trigger power may show and find diagro. If not, they'll do something and you'll move forward. Okay. What else to do is to help the individual in certain situations. So if you know, say, we go to a place where I'm uncomfortable with something, you have to help me out. Because one, you won't find me call places like that. If we have to, then you also have to prepare my mind and then talk me through whatever is going to happen and all that before I get there. And whilst we're there and then you start to realize that I'm getting uncomfortable, please help me and then let's excuse ourselves and leave before I do something that we may all regret, right? And you have to help this individual in any way, shape, or form. Say, if you're my partner and then say I cannot sleep with the lights on, and then you always also want to turn the light on, and as I can't sleep with the light off, and you always want to have the light off, clearly we're going to have a problem, right? So if yours is also not due to a trauma, then let's compromise and then work it out. So at any point in time, please work with these individuals because if you see someone having a reaction,
Okay.
When you see somebody having a reaction, if you've seen someone have a reaction before, you understand exactly what I'm saying. Like it can be very bad. People have been shot just because of someone's reaction. The last one I'm ending on this one and then start to look at me is there's this guy that he's been like, he grew up in a rough neighborhood, into gunshot wounds, and all of that. And he came to the hospital, inpatient, was put on some medication. he stopped taking it because he said it did not make him aware of his environment enough. And yes, I don't want to cry. So we had to talk to him, change the medication around to something that work well. Obiane the way I affecting and Obiane the way we see reacted to any circumstance. So please, let's be mindful of that. Yes, certainly.
Oh, good evening.
Good
Sorry, I came in very late, but listening to all that you've said, listening to you, I think the last statement that you made about yourself, I guess you said you are a doctor, right? Am I right? Sorry.
Yes, I'm a psych practitioner.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how if you have this, how do you deal with patients? Because sometimes you get patients that are rough. How do you deal with that if you are having this? How do you deal with it?
Okay. So once again, as I typically do, I'll generalize it and then I'll narrow it down. Okay. So it just one, we as practitioners also have issues of our own. But what it is that you always have to make sure that you do not bring your issue to the workplace.
Mm.
So that is one. The second thing is that some of the issues affect how you work. So
Okay.
how I deal with it is that this does not stop me from being a good practitioner or efficient one. What it does is that, and the point I was making is in relation to the environment I work. So I do inpatient psych and I also do outpatient. If I'm outpatient, I'm still vigilant, right? But if I'm inpatient, I'm hyper vigilant because you have high acuity cases on the unit. So if you let down your guard a little bit, too many things can happen.
Okay.
Part of why you also have to be hyper vigilant is not because you may be physically attacked, but because you also want to pick up on the actions and reactions of individuals, especially the patients, so that you can get to their aid before it escalates. So example, you have a patient that is pacing up and down, and then you realize that they're forming a fist, right? And then they start pounding, right? As they go up and down. At that point, quickly, you have to get to the patient and then intervene, see why they're doing all of that, if they need certain help. So being a hypervigilant is not necessarily a bad thing. It makes you more aware of your environment. And that is why if I enter a room with, even at an ordinary meeting, I'm picking up on the cues of individuals at the meeting and see if you are really following the meeting, if you are not, if you are checked out mentally or you are still in the meeting. So some of these traits get carried on in your daily lives, right? So in terms of practicing, no, it does not affect my practice negatively at all. Actually, it makes it better because it makes you more aware. And then it also reduces your risk of being in danger.
Okay.
How would that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? Any more questions? As soon as this session is done, we're gonna hand over to TapTap Send for any questions concerning anybody's account, like Mr. No Dueno has a question. So let's go ahead and try to ask all the questions right now concerning the PTSD. If not, Phil, go ahead and we're waiting our presentation now, then we'll just wrap it up.
Okay. So once again, I want to thank everyone for coming, and we'll summarize on some of the highlights real quick as we bring it to an end. So first of all, the definition of PTSD, as mentioned, is the post-traumatic stress disorder. So which means that you must have had a traumatic event either happen to you or somebody else that you witnessed, right? So there is that element. And then after that, the impact that it has on you. So now, it could happen in too many other forms. It could happen where one would not have any reaction to the incident, the other person will have a reaction to the incident, which means that one may not be impacted by the incident in any way, the other person may be impacted, though we're both exposed to the same trauma, right? Now, after the exposure, the symptoms may not happen immediately. For some people, it is delayed response. So it could be months later, it could be years later. So it is very important that you seek for a therapist or a psychiatrist so that we'll be able to assess you and then give you the correct form of treatment. And also look at the past and then see where that is coming from, right? After you've realized that you do have it, please do stay in treatment. One form of treatment may not be enough in curing or managing PTSD symptoms. So it is okay to have a therapist, to add a psychiatrist and other forms of non-pharmacological treatment also, right? The other thing also is if you know someone that has it, please help them through the process and don't be an instigator. And when you also know that you have it, please be aware of your triggers and avoid them as much as possible. Because what happens with PTSD is that the response time is very, very small. So if anything is to happen, it's very impulsive and it's very quick, and it could be dangerous. So please, let's be mindful and let's treat it as any other conditions as we treat hypertension, diabetes, or the likes. I always like to compare mental health with medical conditions because it is easier for us to deal and talk with medical conditions than we are familiar with mental health conditions. So on this note, thank you very much for joining today. And if you ever have any questions, you can please reach out to feelgoodservices@gmail.com and we'll be glad to help.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for such an awesome educative spectrum. I watch it. I must say on behalf of TapTap Send, we are very grateful. And also on behalf of HRE TV, we are very, very grateful. Those of you who are not on the HRE TV chat room, please, we're going to put a link there. Producers, Mr. Mbeti with the link not to Amamia. So if you get on it, we do brainstorm and talk about the topics that we want to hear and talk. Next week, we're going to be dealing with Feel Good again in terms of investment. So again, like I said, if you see the background right now where I'm at, is one of the Feel Good homes, one of the 2-bedroom apartment that Feel Good provides. So we will be dealing with that. We'll be talking about how you can invest your money into real estate or other businesses in order to create another um, cash cow or money making revenue. So thank you very much. Uncle Jimmy, obey sign out and I'm real quick and after you proceed with the with Tata, the Tata said aspect of Q&A.
Okay, but for once again, on behalf of TapTap, Dr. Fall, yeah, that's a for such a wonderful presentation. And so there no one a woman tea as the near the beer the more do as be sure. On this note, no, it does be. I hope that the next week PK can will once again come with us. It does be sure. On this note, no, TapTap, what TapTap issue and be able to me about. I have the Thai class, Sister Teresa, Dr. Daniel, and a lot of others of flow on two issue be a bit marina helpful. Thank you so much once again.
All right, yeah, that's it. But your questions be our one, my Michelle, my infant in Embra. A class, I'm saying class, feel good. It does it. Let me show. A class is sooner than it, so it was some to me by especially Teresa. What time no late for her, but you guys are still supporting and showing much love. I'm gonna end the stream today. We're only able to stream on YouTube, HRE TV, but I shared it on all the Facebook platform, so you can still have access to it. I think there is another question, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Otaibo Media, HL DMV area. I'll say, Doctor, thank you. All right, so we're gonna stop the live stream and we're gonna so what's here Sabre or YouTube and I say yeah through the share stream now. I'm joining the Zoom link, now what questions we have to send in page 4 everybody na maybe I come out. Let them say.